Did you have a moment, though, an aha moment where you were like, I really want to write a book about this being the connection between the biopsychosocial?
It was just an impulse that kept arising, and it's really about how the individual physiology and mentality, including illness and health, is not separable from the social. That our biology is connected to our emotional states and our mindsets, and our emotional states and mindsets are inseparable from our social and cultural environment. So when somebody gets sick, it's a manifestation of a whole culture. I'm talking about chronic illnesses of mind and body. They are not 95% of the time, they're not genetically determined, and they're not random accidents. They're manifestations of a life in a certain culture. And so that you can't separate the individual from the culture.
In a way, I think it was the culmination of all the work you'd previously done. I mean, this book brought together all the topics that you'd written about and then added this big canopy of sociocultural observation and critique and kind of tying all these things together. So in a way, all your work had been coalescing towards this anyway. But
that's true. And it's also deepened the work. Like as you and I wrote this book, new concepts and understandings came to me that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. What's an example of that?
Well, for example, not looking at disease as an entity, so that people say you have multiple sclerosis or I have depression, and that assumes there's such a thing as multiple sclerosis, but it's not a thing. It's not a thing with a life of its own. So here's the example I often use. I have a cup. Here's the cup. I can put it down, give it away, smash it, clean it, drink from it, but it's not me. But to say that I have multiple sclerosis, that way of languaging it is to assume that there's a thing called multiple sclerosis. The characteristics of this cup don't depend on my characteristics or my life. They're just how the person who made it. So when you say somebody has multiple sclerosis, you're saying there's such a thing as multiple sclerosis that's independent of the person in whom it shows up. But actually, it's not a thing that shows up. It's not a thing that comes from the outside or mysteriously arises from the inside. It's a process involving inflammation in your nervous system. And that inflammation in your nervous system manifests the stresses and traumas and histories that you've lived through, which also means that if you can affect that process, you can have an impact on the illness. So it's not a thing, it's a process. That was a new insight for me. I didn't understand that before.
Daniel, what was your role in writing this book? Because you guys didn't exactly co-write it, right? What was the relationship?
Well, certainly not in the sense of two colleagues of equal standing and a particular profession getting together and writing a book, and also not in the sense of like Donald Trump with whatever his name was, Art of the Deal. I wasn't a ghostwriter. My dad didn't need me in order to put words on a page. He's very literate and articulate. He's written 4, I think, very well-written books. I'll talk about my role in a second, but how I came on was around the time of writing the book proposal. He had already been through his I don't have to do this, come to ayahuasca moment. And he had started to put things down on paper, and he had a book proposal, which he had shared with my mother, and her assessment of it was that it was about as readable as a lead balloon.
As Donald Trump.
As Donald Trump. So he sent it to me because I've edited his work before, and always my job was trying to, make the language maybe a little more contemporary, a little more fluid, a little more catchy. I'm a lyricist, I'm a composer, so listening with a lyrical musical ear. And he sent me the book proposal, and I sort of realized while I was reading it that there's a book in here, a really important book, but it's going to need much more of a heavy lift than just a light touch-up or a proofread or an edit. And I said to him, I'm going to have to come aboard in some capacity. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to have to come out from behind the curtain. So from there, and to my relief and delight, he said, I was hoping you'd say that. So from then we had to negotiate and kind of work out as we did it, what my role was. What my role ended up being was from the beginning, helping to structure the way the story of the book is told. I mean, the book is painting it's taking the reader on a journey, and my, you know, dramaturgical instincts, I think, came in handy there, helping us shape how we wanted to tell this story. And I think we ended up telling it in terms of concentric circles, you know, starting at the smallest micro level of cells, all the way out to politics and society. At every level, there's connections between everything, and everything affects everything else. In certain sections, I had more original things to say myself. Certainly when we get into politics or culture or, you know, and healing, these are things that I have some thoughts of my own about. So I would sort of try to blend those with his, but mainly my job was to make it lighter, tighter, and brighter. You know, he would pass a chapter to me. I would do a rewrite of it. Often the beginnings and endings of chapters were things I paid particular attention to, sort of how to grab the reader and then how to set them down and set them up for the next thing. You know, we ended up collaborating very extensively on it, and maintaining that it's his work and it's his authorial voice, while he sort of allowed me to get in there and join that voice. And, you know, and the best compliment I've ever gotten about the book is an interviewer said to me, it feels relational. It feels relationally written, which is a very beautiful thing to say, especially because the book is about relationships, but that he could hear the relationship between us and, you know, the contrasts, but also the overlaps in the prose. So that was my job, and it was an ongoing process to find out what it was.